Hi, during this session, we'll talk about customer satisfaction and service quality. Why is customer retention so important? When we start looking at the idea of lifetime value of customers, we start seeing that the initial sale is not as important as a lifetime of sales. For instance, I'm not as concerned about selling you one pair of running shoes. I'm more concerned about selling you 9 pairs of running shoes that you're going to use over your lifetime. So I want to make sure that I've created that relationship with you in order to best facilitate that multiple sales as we move forward. People estimate that attracting new customers is 3 to 5 times more expensive than retaining old ones. So when we're looking to increase our revenue through markets times consumption, perhaps if we have a large number of different consumers in different markets, different targets, that in order to spike consumption and revenue, we need to get people to buy more and more often. When we look at why people leave and they're not our consumer anymore, what wants and needs are we not fulfilling? It's a little bit different perhaps in sport because of the emotional attachment that we have to different teams in sport, but we can see people transitioning to different sport more now than we had in the past. Customer service and service quality are very important when we're talking about people attending at a stadium and be able to provide us more compensation, more revenue, fewer complaints, word of mouth promotion, the whole social media aspect to it is certainly much more prevalent now than it had been in the past. In addition, when we have a strong consumer retention model, our transaction costs, our ideas, and our expenses to keep a person are much more distinctly lower than they would if we have to attract new participants and new customers all the time. And we have to remember that sport money is discretionary income. Discretionary means it's not essential. They could be using this money for any number of different things, whether it's movies or other entertainment, going out to eat, or savings, or paying down debt. We have to recognize that there's a limit of this discretionary income and areas that people can actually spend against us. So we look at this idea of service quality. That's the spectator or participant's judgment of how excellent a sports service is. That the quality is a perception. The closer that that perception is to excellent and the higher that we meet that expectation, the better we'll do. Customer satisfaction is pleasurable fulfillment. The degree of that pleasurable fulfillment, whether it meets that satisfaction. So we look at service and satisfaction as these ideals of people measuring our facility, measuring our product, measuring our organization against their expectations. So what can people look at? What are they evaluating? One, they look at both the visible and the invisible aspects of marketing, especially when we look at this idea of a facility or a product. The facility itself, the personnel, the customers, the physical environment, process, and people are very visible, and that's what people are evaluating on, as well as this invisible aspect, those expectations, those standards that we're applying for those individual engagements and touch points. Spectator professional sport might evaluate the cleanliness of the stadium, the courtesy and helpfulness of the staff, the management of unruly and annoying co-spectators, and how easy it is to get tickets and to go through the ticketing procedure. So when we look at this idea, it's not just the product we're being evaluated on, but it's also this product extension, all of these other engagements or touch points that our sport organization has with our potential consumer. And those are ones that the marketing department can control, should control, and is a part of. So we need to figure out customer satisfaction. We need to be able to evaluate and find out what people are doing and how do they connect to it. So we look at this direct method. We can ask people questions. We can evaluate them. We can do personal observation, all these different aspects that we learned in terms of our research section. Some indirect methods of whether people are satisfied with our organization or not. Customer complaints, sales records, profits, retention. Much like we're looking internally to our stakeholders and our employees, we can measure satisfaction based on different inputs, like not just complaints, but also people leaving. If we have a lot of people leaving, obviously they're not satisfied with our organization. If we have a lot of people calling in sick or leaving work early, we can see that there's a dissatisfaction with our organization. When we look at this idea of how do we determine customer satisfaction, we look at the expectations, the perceived performance, and also, does this confirm or disconfirm our expectations? A negative disconfirmation is performance falls below of expectations. Zero disconfirmation means the performance equals our expectations. And positive disconfirmation, performance exceeds our expectations. So we look at this idea of how expectations and our perceived performance becomes evaluated, and that leads to our customer satisfaction or dissatisfaction. Service quality is a matter of perception. So we need to focus on the product extensions, whether it's the cleanliness or our hot dog or our beer or the ticket takers and the friendliness of the ushers. Those are things we can control. Those are things within our control as marketers. Now, the perception and the expectation that people may have, we need to set, and we need to set that standard very high. A service gap is a difference between what they expect from the service and what they perceive to have actually happened. There's 4 different types of gaps. The knowledge gap. That's where a customer's expectation of service and management perceptions of these expectations, what management believes consumers expect, is different than what customers really expect. This is something that we've heard a lot, from the ivory tower, people from HR or HQ and different corner offices leveling expectations, thinking that they know what the customer wants, when in fact they've not conducted any research to defend that position. The standards gap. What the organization does not have the resources to deliver on what the customer expects. There's a difference between our perception of the consumer expectations and our service specifications. We can't deliver, and we haven't delivered the resources to what the customer expectations are. The delivery gap is the difference between the organizational service specifications and the actual service delivery. The service specifications are not met due to a lack of willingness or ability of the service personnel. We know what we want to do and we're prepared resources-wise. However, we're not delivering it the way that we should. Or a communications gap, the difference between the actual service delivery and the external communications about that service. That we're promising more in advertising than we're actually delivering, or we're not describing to people what we actually offer them. So we look at these 4 different service gaps between the knowledge gap, a standards gap, a delivery gap, and a communications gap. If you look at those 4, certainly we can evaluate whether we are delivering the right product, delivering the right service, or are we just not communicating. How do we solve that problem? Is it based on a knowledge that we have or the customer has? Is it the standards are different, that we're not holding our level as high as the consumers want? Is it the fact that we don't deliver it either through physical environment, process, or people? Or is there a communications gap? Where is this service gap, the difference between the customer perception and the customer expectations? And then we look at the idea of expectations. If they're low expectations, that's not necessarily a good thing. Even though we're going to meet those expectations, that coming out of a low expectation, there still may be some dissatisfaction. We didn't expect much and we didn't get much. Overall, our expectations may be higher from a customer perspective. And in that aspect, if we expect a lot and we don't get it, we're going to be dissatisfied. So we need to make sure that we're promising a very high level of expectations and we're delivering that level of expectations.